Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Get that whacker on, Alexa, because the AFCON has started officially. There were some games today. Apparently, was it Senegal got a good win earlier today? I think that was the money.
Yeah, well, they won 1-0. I wouldn't say it was a good win because it was like a last-minute penalty, but a win's a win, I suppose. A win's a win.
A win's a win. We've got loads to talk about. AFCON, obviously. We'll talk about the FA Cup third round as well. But also we'll talk about, because chairman's prerogative, we'll talk about Oxford United's new stadium proposals. So if you're not an Oxford fan, Jack's actually a Swindon fan, which is huge. Maybe skip that bit. Yeah, Jack will not be speaking. But first of all, lads, I forgot to do this for the pod we came back after New Year's. But this is what my brother's girlfriend got for me for Christmas. It's an early bath chocolate boot. Look at that.
That is class. That is class.
From Thornton's, really good.
I like even they made an effort to do like a logo, like a T, like they would like a Nike tick. They're very clever.
It's really good. Just thought I'd show that. Did you
what
guys
kind
get
of
any
boot do you reckon it's closest to? I'm not sure.
Oh, Mizuno, I reckon.
Yeah, I was thinking Mizuno. It's got that white bit across it. Nice touch from Thornton's. That
it's a really nice touch.
I would quite like to play for Thornton's FC personally. That'd be a good team.
The team for me.
AFC Thornton's, or I don't know what it'd be. Real Thornton's.
Real Thornton's. Anyway,
Thornton's Palace.
Yeah.
Thornton's Palace. Lovely. Anyway, just wanted to. I can eat that now. I was not eating that until I shown that on the pod. But anyway, I'm joined by Chris. Hello, Chris. How's it going? How's your day been so far today?
My day's been fine. Obviously, the weekend football-wise was absolutely atrocious.
Terrible.
Yeah, we'll go into that a bit more as we go on in the pod. But yeah, it's been a good day.
Good. It's been a good day. Ash Barnes, how's it going?
Yeah, good, mate. Just happy that Arsenal result yesterday, so we can all go in on Chris straight away as soon as the pod starts.
Fantastic. And Jack, how are you this fine Monday?
Lovely, thank you. On Monday,
good.
Just one of those days.
It is one of those days. It is one of those days. But what can you do? Anyway, let's chairman's prerogative. Let's talk about Oxford United's new stadium proposals. For those who haven't seen, those who don't support Oxford, and those who haven't seen, there's a lot of backstory to this Oxford United Stadium malarkey. I'll do like a 30-second elevator pitch, which is basically, we don't own our stadium. The lease runs out in, I think, 2026 or something, and the owner doesn't like us. He charges us like £500,000 a year in rent, which is a lot of money for a League One side. And basically, we're trying to get out of it. And yesterday, there was a leak letter, and it was confirmed by the club today that we're going to be moving, hopefully, subject to Oxford County Council doing some legal stuff and leasing the land to Oxford United. A place called Stratfield Brake, which is in Kidlington, just outside the city. It's a pretty big step. It's the first step of a long process. I'm a town planner and I love Oxford United. So these two things are like a wet dream for me. They really are. I'm absolutely buzzing, to be quite frank with you boys. But yeah, it's quite an interesting one. Wanted to get your thoughts. Jack, from you straight away, as a Swindon fan, do you care? You can say no.
Not really.
There we go.
I mean, it might be nice to have an away end if we actually ever go there again, rather than just the end of the stadium. Because if you don't know Oxford United, it has 3 stands and a fence currently.
Hey.
And what a fence it is.
What a great fence it is, by the way. Yeah. And I find it wild that, that Oxford is an internationally renowned city, right? Probably one of the most famous cities in the world, and its football team has a 3-sided stadium. I just find it crazy. Like, you got Milan and Paris, and even London has Wembley. Oxford, it has an unfinished stadium. It's one of those. But anyway, Chris, it's pretty big news for Oxford fans. What are your thoughts on that?
It's certainly an interesting one. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll be honest. I'm not a big fan of the Kassam Stadium myself. Like, I can get why away fans call it one of the worst away days in the country.
I think it's a terrible away day. I think it's
awful.
Absolutely awful.
I mean, you got to think the nearest train station's dead centre of town, and that's a 10-15 minute drive. And even that, you either have to get on a taxi, which is extra expense, or you have to jump on a bus, and the amount of times I've seen like away fans waiting ages for a bus, and there's like a long queue just to get a bus back into the city centre. It's honestly awful. And then like even when you get to the Kassam, there's no. I mean, all right, you go to Hollywood Bowl for a pint. There's not like
I won't
any.
have a bad word said about Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. There's no traditional like pub. There's no like that's the thing. You go on like your away days, like sort of guide like things on the internet, and there's like, oh, I would go to a pub and that. Prime example is Peterborough. One of the best away days I've been on, because the pub was a barge. It was fantastic, and that. But with Oxford, like you've literally got none of that. It is one of like the worst away days and that. So it is quite an interesting one, and it is something I support. But I did have like a colleague, because obviously was listening to Jack FM, which is like the local radio station,
Of course,
in Oxfordshire and that, and they were talking about that. I'd say they weren't talking about. Obviously, they were saying it on like their news section and that. And like one of my colleagues, like she lives like in that area, and she was sort of saying, well, she walks her dogs around there and that, and it's a local nature reserve. And so, are they going to build on top of that and destroy wildlife, destroy natural habitats?
And this is the thing that me and Chris were touching on pre-pod, that these are the type of people that will come out and come against the planning application if anything comes in for Oxford United. People are very, don't build near me. That's pretty much what it is. The planning system is very adversarial. People are very much, it's very conflicting in many areas, and people will say, I walk my dog here. I let my ferret loose around here. Don't build a massive football stadium on it, things like that. So I completely sympathise, Chris, with that.
Another thing we was talking about pre-pod as well is also like when the away fans come to town. I mean, we know what a few away fans are like after they've had a
Swindon
few
fans,
especially Ginge,
especially Jack, especially rowdy.
Yeah, but do people want their front gardens to become public toilets, for example? And that when people have had a few too many to drink. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, the train link would be a lot better for away fans, because literally, as Oxford Parkway is pretty close by to Stratfield Break. Like in that sense, it'd be brilliant for them. But obviously, you got to think of the local people that live in Kidlington. There's like extra traffic as well. Like traffic's another huge thing. Like that's the thing. That's another rubbish thing about the Kassam is traffic is an absolute nightmare. You hit like a certain point, and you just sat there for like half an hour, just pretty much in gear one, just like going, stopping, going, and that is like that. That's another thing that local people probably won't like, is traffic.
I agree. But I think let's move away from a car-dependent world, lads. Let's do that. Greta Thunberg wants us to do that, and maybe I'll listen to her a few things. She says smart things. Barnes, what about you? You saw this news, I assume, maybe yesterday or today. What were your initial reactions to it?
Caution initially. I think as Oxford fans, it's been rumoured probably for 10 years at least that we might leave the Kassam and get to a new stadium. I think the fans obviously want this, and it's huge for the club. We know that a club, as you said, Tang, a club being dependable or having its own income through owning its own stadium is quite a big thing. And for Oxford to go up the leagues, obviously it can happen without it, but to be sustainable in, say, the Championship, ideally we need to own our own stadium, and this sort of is a pathway to that. I think, again, as you boys both said, you've got to think of all the stakeholder opinions that could potentially get in the way. That, although I'm not a town planner like you, Tag, I have worked on applications and these kind of things, and there is always the most sort of random reasons why people wouldn't want a stadium or something, or a development in their local area. Some of them are fair enough. Some of them are just completely ridiculous. Like you said, I'll walk my ferret in the woods round here or something like that. So this stadium's going to affect that. So there's a lot to go through, and it's going to take a lot of time. So although we're seeing talks now, let's be real, we're probably, depending on how those talks go, even if they go well, we might not be seeing the stadium for so it's sort of a 5 to 10 year plan would be my guess, although we still don't really know the details of that. One thing I'd say about Kidlington as well is I actually don't like Kidlington. I don't know if anyone. This is news for no offense to the people of Kidlington, but the brace.
How can you not be offended?
Wait. Because listen to the reason. This is
Okay.
personal to me. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad place, but the brace place where people get their braces fitted
huge.
for the local people of Oxfordshire is in Kidlington. And now I didn't actually have braces, my brother
I was
did. So I
going
had
to
to
say,
sit
you never
in
had
that,
braces.
yeah, but I had to sit in that waiting room in the brace place for so many hours, just pointlessly being so bored. So my image of when everyone says Kidlington, I sort of get a flashback of me in that waiting room, just sat there in that horrible brace place. So I'm not big on Kidlington, but I do think it does make sense to have a stadium. It doesn't have to be in Oxford, the stadium. I do think most of the fans of Oxford are sort of, we're the only club, we're sort of one
So
club in
one
the
club
county.
yeah.
One club county, as people say.
Lovely.
So there will be fans coming from all across Oxfordshire. And as Chris pointed out, the travel links is by Park and Ride. You can then go Oxford Parkway Station. So better links into the city. So there's promising signs. And then there's obviously the negatives, like, it's on green belt and stuff like that. So I guess it's just wait and see. Don't get too optimistic if you're an Oxford fan. And yeah, don't get too down potentially if it doesn't happen.
Yes, as I said, it's a first step in a very arduous process, and it is outside the city of Oxford. But the university and the hospitals own pretty much every bit of land in Oxford, so you're never gonna find land big enough to have a stadium. Jack, you've been to many stadiums in your life. If you were asked by Oxford United for some reason to be the chief architect for this project, is there any stadiums that you've been to where you're like, oh, I like this, this could be a decent stadium if you do this, that, and that? Have you been anywhere that you'd be like, maybe replicate this?
See, I quite like an old-fashioned stadium, so the chance of being able to replicate that is quite difficult. Like my favourite, probably one of the favourite stadiums I've been to was Griffin Park. Rest in peace.
Oh,
Used to be Brentford Stadium. The only ground that had 4 pubs on each corner. It was
that was great. That must have been great.
And it was just, I don't know, you've never been. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a slightly scary away end, just because it was so. I don't know if you've been. You've probably been. All of you been to stadiums where it feels like you can also tell the health and safety was a lot different when it was
Charlton
built.
was like that
because it was like sheer. Like you were like look. It was like almost you were like level. It was so like steep. It almost felt like that you were like on the line, on the goal line. You're literally looking down at the crossbar. It was so steep. But it was a great stadium, great atmosphere. I don't think I've actually been to many like brand newly built stadiums. I mean, the King Power's good, Leicester Stadium. I must admit, I've been there. That's a really good stadium. But I also don't know what capacity Oxford are looking at, because that's a big factor.
18,000. Yeah, it's said, and a lot of stadiums now can obviously get expanded pretty easily. So 18,000, I think, is reasonable.
I think the difficulty, a lot of these new stadiums, I think they lose an element of atmosphere by the insistence of having the corners filled in. Like you look at some like stadiums that you go to that have like the full dome stadiums that are sort of 15 to 25,000. They usually fill the sides, the home side, and then usually the main stand behind the goal, like the home fans. Then you usually find that all 4 corners are pretty empty. So I think you lose a bit of the atmosphere. I think that's quite, for a smaller club, it's probably, if you want like a really good atmosphere. You're
calling small, you're in League 2.
Are we going to keep the fence? Could we get 3 sides again? We go again.
That's surely got to go.
Well, funny if they did.
That's surely got to go. That's surely got to go in the museum somewhere. You just got to take. Like they take a little bit of it with you and just put it up in the museum.
I'd like to see the architect build a 5-sided stadium just to make sure that we had 3 stands. I don't know, but somehow have a 5-stand or 5-sided stadium just to really stick it to everyone who took the piss over the years.
Do you actually think that it would be worth having like 4 stands as such? Because obviously, like every other, like Swindon has it, for example, but I got to be honest and say that literally, apart from Friday when Man City played in the FA Cup, that away stand with no roof is literally used like once every 3 years, and nobody sits in it. So it's going to be the same thing with Oxford. I think if they build 4 stands, it's just going to be, it will look good, but the practicality of it is quite limited, really, unless you have a really good.
It depends how they spread it out, I reckon. I know Rotherham Stadium's quite nice in terms of it's got a relatively big capacity, but it's all quite low, and they sort of fill out around it which is quite nice. Like MK Dons, for example, is the emptiest stadium I've ever been to in my life. It's terrible.
Awful.
I think
It's a nice It's a nice stadium, but they just don't have the fans to fill it. And I swear that the guy that does the tunnel, like, announces the attendance, I think he just picks a number out the hat and says, there's 12,000 people in here. I'm just going to say, 12,226. I don't know. Because honestly, I've been to like MK Dons. It's like, they like say the number that's in there. You're like, what? Really? You start looking around. It's like, there's definitely not that number in here. There's certainly not the noise for that number in there. That's for sure.
I think you're right though, Tingers, about the Rotherham sort of. I've never been to Rotherham, but that sort of style of stadium. If you want to sort of make a nicer looking stadium, like a complete like dome shaped stadium, I think it needs to be like sort of scaled to like the size. Look at the actual capacity and the average and try and get it close to that. Because if you make it too big, you get situations like you were saying with Milton Keynes, and there's a few others as well. Like, I mean, Coventry are quite a big club. I mean, they fill, they do get quite a few fans, but I don't think they very rarely fill that Rico. And the few times I've been there to watch them away, it's really, really empty in parts of the stadium. I suppose they build it for the future, but I think, in a lot of cases you can just expand, can't you? Like Man City.
Yeah.
Look at theirs, for example. They built that stadium for what they needed at the time, and then over the years they've just added the extra stands on the top. So maybe just don't overcommit and build a 30,000 seater in Kidlington.
Okay, I'll tell them that. Chris, what's on your wish? What's your number one wish list for Oxford United? If you could say something to the directors, or I don't know, Carl Robinson, that you want for the new stadium, what is that one thing? Mine's just not have a running track. If there's a running track, I will not go. I hate running tracks.
It's safe standing, to be honest. Obviously, they have been trialing it at some of the Premier League games, and that's the thing. All right, it is nice to have a sit down and that, but you create a lot more of an atmosphere when you're stood up chanting and that. Like, so for me, safe standing would be the top priority.
Oh, very good. And Barnes, what about you? Do you have anything on your wish list?
The boring option would be, the travel to the game, because at the moment it's terrible, as we've all mentioned, for away fans and home fans, to be honest. But again, I'll repeat this what I said earlier: make it free stands. Let's stand out. let's bring back the fence set. Monaco, they've got free stands.
That is true.
Their stadium's really cool, and Braga, they got a beautiful stadium.
Kidlington,
Monaco.
To look at though, isn't it? I think.
Same.
Like, I think, like Oxford have got like a small shopping complex, and then you've got Braga, which is just like a massive. I suppose Braga's not much to look at; it's just a massive cliff. Yeah. Slightly more to look at than an Oxford, and I don't know about Monaco, but I think you probably have something behind it that's probably quite nice to look at.
You're underrating the famous Kidlington skyline, Jack. Is all I can say.
There's also the question of the name, which is also going to be an interesting one, because it's been quite some years since Oxford have actually had the ability to name their own stadium. And the fact
I reckon they'll call it like the New Manor or something.
Yeah, but there wasn't that named after a road though, wasn't it? So you can't really name it the Manor if it's not the road.
Yeah, true.
Unless you create a new Manor road.
It'll be like Visit Indonesia Stadium or something like that. Given our new owner is an Indonesian businessman, so it'll be
Cherry Reds
like
Record Stadium. The early Bath football stadium would be.
Yeah, let's get involved.
There has to be a very cheap sponsorship if we're going to sponsor it.
They'd pay us.
Yeah, you'd have to pay us to sponsor.
Yeah, very good. And I think I've absolutely lost my train of thought there. To be honest, I was going to say something, completely lost it. Here we go. I would like personally to see Oxford is known as the city of spires, isn't it, or dreaming spires? Like a spire on there, I guess. I don't know. That'd be nice. I don't think they would, but one can dream. But yeah, what can we do? Anyway, we'll move on because Jack's sick of talking about Oxford United now. We've done 20 minutes of it. That's fine by me. Let's talk about. Should we do AFCON or FA Cup third round next? It's an open question.
Let's go FA Cup.
Let's go FA Cup. Just so Jins can talk a bit about Swindon.
There we go. We talk about the FA Cup. I'll be honest, I only watched one game, and that was the Arsenal Forest game. Chris is already shaking his head. I'm so sorry, Chris, but we're going to start there. Arsenal were terrible. I thought they were just so lackluster and really surprised me, considering I know they said it in commentary, so I'm not going to try and pass this off as my own, but it was one of the few competitions where Arsenal could have actually won it, and it was a real chance of silverware. And now they're out. They're not going to win the league. I don't think so anyway. Really puts massive pressure on the League Cup as well. So I don't know. I just feel like Arteta and Arsenal missed a bit of a trick there by not taking it more seriously than they did. And also Nuno Tavares had an awful game. Just say that as a left back to left back. Come on, Nuno.
He was not for very long, was he?
He was on for like 4 minutes, wasn't he? Yeah. Chris, as the part-time Arsenal fan of this group, your thoughts on the Arsenal game, or just on the FA Cup in general? Let's just open it up.
Well, first and foremost, it was lovely to hear the voice of Ali McCoist on commentary. I mean,
what a player!
What a commentator! What a commentator!
He's so good. He goes, "That's not for me, by the way. No, no foul for me, by the way."
Yeah. He's like, if I'm a ref, I'm giving that. It's like, I think it was the penalty shout on Jack Colback. But first and foremost, before I get into Arsenal, let's give Nottingham Forest massive credit. They were phenomenal, and like everyone on that pitch for them was phenomenal. I think special shout out to Jed Spence at right back. He was
very good, wasn't he?
He was outstanding. Also James Garner, central midfield. I guess the Man United fans would have loved to see that performance from a Manchester United youngster. You know, it was too fair. Like I said, the whole team were brilliant throughout. And Steve Cooper's one of them managers that he come into Nottingham Forest when they was really struggling, they was really down the bottom, and that he's sort of come in. He's not only steadied the ship, he's got them into a playoff push as well. And I think Steve Cooper, he is kind of on the same bracket as Graham Potter. I think he will be one of them managers that will get a move to the Premier League. Whether he might take Forest up to the Premier League, and to be honest, I wouldn't mind seeing Nottingham Forest in the Prem just because they're massive. They are a massive club. They're a fallen giant in that. It would be nice to see him get him in there. But even if he doesn't get them up, I can see him getting a Premier League job because he's doing brilliant there. He's done a fantastic job at Swansea where he massively overachieved, and he's done fantastic work with England's youngsters. Obviously, he won the under-17 World Cup final back in the day, and he had amazing players to work with, and he's been part of that development. In terms of Arsenal, I mean, I could come on here and just rant and rave about individual players, but collectively, absolutely atrocious. Absolutely atrocious.
Here we go.
It was shambolic. I mean, I can only think of one good Arsenal chance yesterday, and that was that Nketiah header where he should have done a lot better with it. And I'll tell you what, I have come on here and said I'm not going to rant about individuals, but Nketiah is one of them that he might go, he might stay. On that performance yesterday, he can go, to be honest. but like you said, Tang, it puts huge pressure on Arteta. He's got to either deliver the League Cup or he's got to get top four, or he's got to get both. Otherwise, what have Arsenal done this season? They're still the team that have spent the most money in terms of transfers and that, and it's kind of like, all right, you might have Europa League show for it, but even that's kind of not good enough because you think about like the other teams that are they're playing Europe and these competitions and that, like West Ham yesterday. Obviously, they're still in the Europa League, got to the quarterfinal of the League Cup, and they was involved in quite a tight game there, and they got the win yesterday, and that against Leeds in the game before the Arsenal game. And like if West Ham can go through, then Arsenal should be going through as well. But yeah, it wasn't good, and it puts a lot more pressure on Thursday's game, that's for sure. But yeah, and obviously going back to Nottingham Forest, obviously it sets them up for a tie against Leicester City. Obviously, Holders and Big East Midlands derby, and they'll probably be on the television again. But I can have another rant about televised games and the games they decide to pick at the weekend. I mean, absolutely atrocious. I mean, just because I get to see Manchester United for free tonight, that's not what the FA Cup's about. The FA Cup should be about your teams like your Kidderminsters beating Reading. I mean, even if they didn't beat Reading, that game should have been televised anyway. It's a team that's in the 6th tier of English football and could do with television money against a team that's in the Championship. That game should have been televised. Cambridge going to St James's Park the richest club in the world, might I add. That game should have been televised as well. Honestly.
It is.
Anyway,
Yeah, I'll pick up here. Go on.
Sorry,
Jack.
on Arsenal, Chris. Do you not think that, just from an observation, I think that, do you not think Arteta has something to blame by massively underestimating Forest?
Oh,
like looking at the team they played was pretty poor.
Absolutely.
You know, and if you look at, you use Swindon as an example, when you look at the Man City team they played against a League Two team, you know, shows a little bit more respect for a competition when you play, you know, the team of that level against a League Two team. Yet Arsenal's field, like, not even half of their, like, not even their substitutes really. You know, you're looking at like Cedric's, like, you know, probably going to be going at some point, isn't he? They reckon, you know, and you got Lokonga that's sort of in and out. And, you know, Patino obviously is a great young player, but you shouldn't rely on somebody at that age to get you through an FA Cup. You know, he should be in there with the experienced players like Man City did with Palmer. You know, it should have been, you know, Lacazette and all those sort of players around him, Saka, playing in those sort of positions around Patino, not him and, you know, another unused, hardly used player in the middle. It's sort of a bit of you're sort of setting him up for failure, really, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, all right, I don't want to use this as excuses, but Arsenal do have quite a few players out in terms of AFCON injuries and COVID cases. I know it was Xhaka and Balogun, they're both out with COVID. But no, I 100% agree. I don't know why Lacazette didn't start yesterday's game, even if they played him in the central attacking midfield role behind Nketiah. All right, maybe it would have been sacrificing Ødegaard or maybe we shouldn't have started Patino. Maybe Patino should have been one that, you know, come off the bench, you know, ease him into it rather than, you know, putting them out there. Because let's face it, obviously the City ground, that's a, you know, that is a tough ground to go to for an 18-year-old making your first senior start and that. So yeah, no, I do 100% agree with you. And like the only player that could give themselves a pat on the back for Arsenal yesterday was Leno. He made some great saves, but other than that, the rest of them just weren't good enough.
I take both sides of Jack's point there in terms of City putting out a decent side against Swindon, but then City do have a better squad, I think, than Arsenal. Arsenal don't have that
100%.
sort of depth, do they? But then the other side of that is, you know, I'm just looking here, Forest finished 17th last season, but 9th and 7th the seasons before. They could easily be a Premier League club now. And if they were, they wouldn't have, I don't feel Arteta would have chosen a squad that was so weak, to go to Jack's point of not taking it seriously and things like that. And I will say on the Arteta thing as well, to speak to Jack's point and Chris's point, of Arteta won the FA Cup and his job's been under threat at various points in his tenure. And the only thing that separates, and obviously he's got a lot of comparisons to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in terms of a former player, a young manager, etc. The only thing that separated Arteta from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was Arteta won a trophy.
Yeah.
And if he didn't, then we know where Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is now. Well, we don't know, but he's not at Man United anymore. So the fact that he didn't take this competition as seriously as he should have done, I feel was a massive fail on his behalf. So just to speak to your Arsenal points there, and then on televised games, was it West Ham Leeds at the weekend?
West Ham Leeds, yeah.
That's
going to be televised. Yeah.
I just find it crazy. I feel like I saw a tweet where it was like, if it's a Premier League team against like a third or fourth division or whatever non-league side, it should automatically be on television. I agree.
Yeah.
There's no way of enforcing that, but I do agree, because you're missing out on the Newcastle versus Cambridges, and Kieran Trippier not pointing at the badge, but somewhere in his like armpit.
Point at kayak.
Yeah, there you go. And you and all the Kidderminster Harriers thing. You're missing out on all these for games which we do see every week. United, Villa, Leeds, West Ham, etc. I think there's something I'm missing there. But anyway, I'll move on to Ash. What caught your eye? We covered a lot of ground there already, but what's caught your eye? You could cover old ground, or you can cover new ground if you'd like.
I will quickly talk about the Arsenal Nottingham Forest game, just because you boys have spoken about it. Firstly, big shout out to my mate Will, huge fan of the Early Bath podcast and huge City Nottingham Forest fan. Sorry,
it's huge.
And he was very, very pleased. He was quite worried that a few of the Forest players might not be with them next season, the likes of Brennan Johnson, who I think really impressed. And he was really good at Lincoln as well.
I was going to
in
take the
League
piss
One
that Lewis
last season.
Grabban was still playing. I was going to take the piss that he was still playing, and then he scored, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't, because he's been around the block for ages.
He's
I
got
remember
a
he was at
great
Rotherham.
goatee, Lewis
It's
Grabban.
huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it
It's
is.
huge. Massive. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I think you lot have been a bit harsh on Arteta, bearing in mind that other than Ramsdale and Lacazette, I can't really see who else he could have actually started that was fit or not at AFCON or had COVID. They were terrible. I thought they just didn't control the game at any point, did they? They'd never had control of that game, and Forest were in it consistently, and it wasn't a surprise when they scored, and that Arsenal didn't really have anything to give afterwards. But yeah, more broadly in the FA Cup, there were some cracking games, weren't there? That Barnsley-Barrow game was unbelievable.
Superb.
The free kick, that Ronaldo-esque free was. I say Ronaldo, his free kicks are shit, but yeah, it was unbelievable, absolute thunderbolt. He must have been about 40 yards out, and some of the and there was another one of their goals which was about 25 yards. And I think Barnsley, that Carlton Morris had a couple of really good finishes as well. It was an unbelievable game. So yeah, that was huge. I enjoyed the Kidderminster Reading game, especially the second goal in that game. That's absolutely hilarious. I have no idea how that wasn't a foul on the keeper. I swear the guy just went and rugby tackled him into the net and the ball went in. And the ref's like, it's all right. Magic of the cup edit, let it go.
In fairness, the Reading keeper didn't cover himself in glory with the first goal.
No, he didn't. But I feel like because he was having a bad game,
that's why he's number 2, Chris.
The pitch wasn't the best. It sort of looked like he fell over. That the ref was just like, this is just a nice story, isn't it? I'll just let it go. Massive foul on the goalkeeper, I thought. But yeah, it's good to see those games. Well, that one wasn't televised, but good to see a few cup shocks anyway. On the televised games, I think you say that maybe like Cambridge Newcastle could have been televised, but we're only saying, had Newcastle won 3-0, we wouldn't really care. I think more egregious is the fact that, as you mentioned, that the Leeds West Ham just makes no sense. We don't want to see unless you're a Leeds or West Ham fan, you don't want to see two Premier League teams, especially when they're on the week after. So, yeah, I think the Newcastle one, obviously, as well, is of course interesting. But again, I feel maybe people are jumping on that too much. Their Newcastle record in the FA Cup in recent years is completely shit. Exactly. What are you trying to say, Tim? We're not a good side.
We're the best free side.
Our cup record isn't normally pretty good. But yeah, I just feel that Eddie Howe's not really bothered about the FA Cup. It's all about survival for them, all about getting players in and worrying about the Premier League. I don't think there'll be too many tears from Newcastle. But obviously, they have 54,000 fans there. It's not losing at home to a League One team it's never ideal.
Did they put out a strong squad, Newcastle?
Yeah, pretty much first team. They were unlucky, to be fair. Like the Cambridge goalkeeper made some sensational saves, and they did. Yeah. Unlike the Arsenal Forest game, where you could say it was a pretty even match, Newcastle did completely dominate, and it's just one of them where the ball wouldn't go in. But they've had many of those days, haven't they? So it is a theme.
There we go. And Jack, what about you? Do you want to talk about Swindon a little bit and see how they? And I think they put up a relatively decent fight against City.
Yeah, I thought
for the first 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to put it into perspective. Like you sort of watch it, and it's a very weird feeling watching it as a fan, knowing you're going to lose, but just don't know when. Do you know what I mean? I appreciate it didn't last very long.
No, I agree.
Do you see what I mean? It didn't last very long for Swindon because we 1-0 down after about 5 minutes. But it's sort of like the expectation for the game when they're walking out. I was like, right, okay, and we're going to lose, but just when?
Yeah.
And it was just, when you look to the starting lineup, I also couldn't believe that was such a strong, as we touched on before.
How much was that side that they put out?
Over 400 million. I think it's over 420 million. I think around that sort of baseline. And it's, they had that whole team, and then Cole Palmer, and he was actually the best player out of all of them. But just, I suppose when you're playing with, I hope we discussed this like pre-pod, when you're playing in a team with that good quality against a side probably as bad as Swindon, if that's the best way to say it, compared to what he's used to training with and used to playing with, you're always going to do well as a young player. I think, it's sort of an environment where you can thrive. And that's sort of partly the reason why I think, like we touched on it with the Patino with Arsenal, partly why he didn't do, when you look at the two of them, like Palmer and Patino, why they necessarily didn't have the same sort of impacting the games. I think it was partly due to the teams that they were playing in, and Arsenal's, like Barnes said, they had a bit of a problem with injury. But you look at Man City's team and the amount of quality they had starting, you just slotted perfectly into that team. But to be honest, I was quite happy with it. I mean, I'm just happy we scored, to be honest.
Yeah, that's nice.
Just because it was nice, to actually, considering how little amount of goals they conceded, Man City in the league, to actually get one over on them, and a pretty good back four as well. Apart from maybe Laporte or Stones, you still had Cancelo, Diaz, and Walker. That's still pretty decent back four.
Diaz and Cancelo are probably
3.
two of the best players that might get Player of the Year sort of things. They're obviously decent players.
So
I will say, obviously, when Swindon scored, there were massive scenes, and the Oxford fan in me was just like, "What are you celebrating for? You're losing. Grow up." But then the football fan in me was kind of like, "That's what you love, That's the whole point of the FA Cup. That's the whole point of giant killings. You go mental when you do score, especially against such a big team like City, who are worth 10 times more than what your club is actually worth." Do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things. So I did, whilst I see the tongue-in-cheek comments made by a lot of Oxford fans, I do sort of see your side of it.
It's just one of them things, isn't it? Like they play in like almost a different world.
They do.
Like,
they do.
It's in the same football like sphere, isn't it? In the same English like football league setup. But they play in their fans see completely different football to what we used to see. And Swindon do play decent football for the level they play at. They do knock the ball around quite nice. I know Oxford do as well. As much as it pains me, do play quite good football for their the level they play at.
Yeah.
Because there is, as there is teams in the levels that we play at that literally just hump it forward, flick it on.
Wickham.
Yeah. And he's basically any Steve Evans team.
Yeah. He got sacked, didn't he?
I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, such a shame, Steve.
And as much as it is effective, it is like so. And it is effective in games. And it's infuriating when you lose to a team like that. But
yeah, it is.
It is just different, isn't it? It's a different world that they live in. Like seeing like Diaz and De Bruyne every week. Must be just bonkers.
Yeah, it's one of those where I assume Swindon was sold out, and you probably, even if you get maybe like 10 kids or so there that go to another Swindon game, it was like their first game ever watching football in real life, not on a screen, and they come back next week because they just love the atmosphere when Swindon scored. That's kind of what it's all about, right? People that wouldn't normally go to watch the big tie comes to town, they get to experience not watching Super Sunday, and you're actually there at the stadium, and you come back next week. That's kind of what it's all about. That when Swindon score their goal and things like that. So yeah, it's good. It's good vibes.
It's just players that you don't expect to see in those stadiums. These are players that are used to playing in the San Siros, the Wembleys, all over the world in massive finals competitions all over the globe, and then they're playing a third round FA Cup in bloody county ground in Swindon.
Yeah, we've played City a couple of times, haven't we? And I remember first year that we drew them, I think I saw David Silva at the fence. And he was unreal. He's so diminutive and he's so small, but he's so good. And to see him and then the fence behind him was glorious.
It's just difference in quality, isn't it? It's just some of the things you just see. Like some of the thing. I mean, City didn't even really get out of first gear, to be truthful. But you look at some of the things they were doing, like it was like a bloody exhibition.
Yeah.
Like Cancelo and Rodri just slamming ones off the bar, like shots off the bar. It's just like, this is just ridiculous. You just don't see it at all, ever. You maybe, like you watch like Man City regularly, you probably see that once every 3 or 4 games.
Yeah.
If you go and watch Swindon, you see that one every 50 game.
Yeah.
That sort of that caliber of goal or that caliber of quality. It's just you don't get to see it very often. I think that's, like you said, to touch on the point where that's what it's about. That's what you get the young fans of these smaller clubs get to see that's something they don't see very often. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I mean, just to touch on like Ginger's point, I remember that first Man City Oxford game when Man City beat us 3-0. Even like fringe players like Zinchenko, I remember he literally played like
real.
He literally played like a volley crossfield pass over to Mahrez. It was even like the Oxford fans just sat there clapping it because like Jim said, you never see anything like that in Oxford. The maybe like you see is Goran 2-footing someone. and
Oh,
then
yeah.
you get a big cheer out of the fans and that. But yeah, when Zinchenko done that, the whole stadium was clapping. It was like, bloody hell, that's just quality.
As Jack said, it's like you're going to lose. Just when. It's a
Yeah.
very weird
Yeah.
feeling. It's a very weird feeling.
Yeah. You don't get it very often, and you only know it if you support like a lower league club.
Yeah.
There's just some games
Yeah.
that are just not possible. You're just waiting to lose.
Yeah.
You just don't know when.
Yeah, I agree.
Although Oxford did equalise against Man City second time round,
I went mental.
I just said you have that false hope. It's like, can we actually beat? Because I remember Oxford actually played well that second time.
I was in a pub in
3-1.
London watching that, and I was the only person in the pub that went mental. Like, no one was even watching the football. I was just in the corner watching it, screamed, and people were like, "What is he doing? He's obviously drunk."
Yeah,
it's Tuesday. Come on.
It's even that other game with the Saint Maximan when he scored that ridiculous goal.
Yeah,
you know that one
yeah.
where he just dribble past like 4 people, smashed it at the top corner. It's just like, that's the sort of quality, isn't it? That's the difference. Is that sort of them moments when you need players to do stuff. It's just unreal.
It's a shame. Wouldn't trade it for anything else there. Anyway, let's talk about AFCON, because AFCON did start, and technically this is the AFCON special because we're still doing the whole specials thing. To be honest, I haven't watched any because I've been busy. That's pretty much my only excuse. But all I can see is it seems like every game is ended 1-0. Even Gabon against Comoros is 1-0 right now. Aaron Bupenza has just scored for Gabon, for those who have first goal scorer bets on. Chris, I don't really know where to start. Senegal got a win earlier today. Mane scored. Guinea beat Malawi. Morocco beat Ghana. Where would you like to start? Because I have no questions.
First and foremost, like the amount of disrespect this competition's got is pretty sickening, to be honest. Because it is though, because just because it's played in the middle of the season doesn't mean it's any less important than a Euros or a Copa America. Is just because it doesn't get the same coverage, because it's not, especially from an English point of view, it's not. It isn't the Euros and it's not the World Cup. So why should we care about this competition? But for the African players, this is huge. And I was talking to you like pre-pod and that. For me, like the African Cup of Nations is one of them international tournaments that is, I'd probably say it's the most wide open tournament that anyone could win it. And that, I mean, you just got to look back through, especially, all right, you had that period where Egypt dominated it in like the late noughties and that, but from 2010 onwards, like you've had Zambia win it in 2012, which was
I remember that. That's like the one that sticks out on my mind so much. I don't know why.
Yeah, you had Burkina Faso getting to a final in 2013, which again, that was unbelievable, and like obviously Nigeria won it that year. And then you've just had like so many different winners. I know Algeria won it last time. It was Cameroon before, Ivory Coast and such. And yeah, I mean, to describe this tournament so far, it's definitely been a cagey one. A lot of I think most of the wins have been 1-0, apart from Cameroon where they won 2-1. But again, that was a bit of a cagey 2-1, and Burkina Faso, in fairness, they were quite unlucky. They did have a few good chances in that game. But it's certainly an interesting one, because like even like in the group stages, there are a few like there are some big games. Like, I think you got Nigeria versus Egypt coming up either tomorrow or the next day. You've got Ivory Coast and Algeria in the same group, and that obviously Morocco beat Ghana 1-0 today, which is even that's a huge game. It's certainly an interesting one. It's one of them that if you were to ask me who was going to win the African Cup of Nations, I probably couldn't tell you, just because it's that difficult of a competition to judge and that. But that's what makes it so special. Like for me, it's just you just don't know who's going to win. Like sometimes, like the big teams, they just completely flop in the competition, and then you have like an unexpected underdog out of nowhere that just they push these like Zambia, like they just pushed all the big teams in that 2012 competition and actually managed to win it, and that. So it's like I said, it is certainly a wide open competition in that, and also I think it just goes to show like how much African football has developed throughout the years. That you're actually seeing like world class superstars like your Manes, your Salahs, your Kalidou Koulibaly's, Edouard Mendy I'll just name 3 Senegal players. Maybe Senegal are the favourites. I
Mido
don't know.
and Miyazaki.
Senegal are the favourites, Chris. They are.
They are,
Yeah.
they are.
Favourites.
Yeah. I mean, they've got a brilliant squad, but even like players like you got, your Wilfred and Ndidi's for Nigeria. It is just such a wide open competition, and it does produce like some very like funny moments as well. Not gonna lie, and that. So no, I'm looking forward to catching up with the AFCON.
Fantastic. And Chris loves vuvuzelas as well.
I do not like vuvuzelas. That is the one thing that is not very good about this competition so far. When I was watching the highlights of yesterday's games, where I heard the
no.
exactly. That was my Oh no,
I'm partial to a vuvuzela. I think it adds to the atmosphere.
It ruins it.
Barnes, Chris made a really good point there about the AFCON not getting as much respect as it maybe deserves. I know probably fans of Premier League sides probably see it as a bit of a sort of a burden. We lose our players for a month, whatever, and also the whole Watford and Nigeria, wasn't it, about not letting players go and things like that, and there's a lot of hostility there. Do you agree with the fact that even though it's in the middle of the season, it is sort of treated with a bit of disrespect, and maybe is that because the pulling power of the Premier League taking precedence? And I don't know if this happens in other leagues, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because if you remember, this tournament was actually meant to happen last year, so this is actually AFCON 2021, and they have actually, or they were meant to be moving it to the European summer, so they would have avoided this situation, but because of COVID and other things, they have had to put it back to where it used to be, which is just after Christmas. And now I think Chris is right. It is definitely underappreciated and underrated, and I think you had the question, Sebastian Haller got a question by reporters like, do you want to go, or should you stay with Ajax? And he was right to call him out. That is a disrespectful question, and that's not the first time we've heard those kind of questions to African players and even South American players. Sometimes when we had the whole instance with COVID earlier in the season, they were saying to Brazilian or Argentinian players, like, do you want to play for your country? In some cases, they've been banning players from going to play for their country. So it is an interesting one, but I do think with the AFCON, it is partly to do with the schedule. It has been made worse by COVID in this year's AFCON. So I don't know. I feel like players have the right to go and play for their countries, and it is, as Chris said, a really fun and unpredictable tournament. And from a fan's perspective, it's very enjoyable. But let's face it, we don't like. If someone was like, "Could you name a African like domestic club team?" I could probably name about 2. And they probably just because of like FIFA, Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates. Thank you.
Oh,
right off the bat.
Al Sadd, are they the Egypt one that are quite good? I don't know, but
what managed, wasn't it?
Saudi Arabia, Qatar.
Saudi Arabia.
My bad.
Yeah,
but I think the point I'm trying to make is that we're, as sort of a Western fan base, we're quite ignorant. Even like South American teams, like they're on FIFA, we know more about them. Whereas African football, we know, other than the players that come and play in Europe and come and play in the Premier League, we know nothing about it. So I can see sometimes why it is sort of a bit undervalued, and maybe it's not at the forefront of the mind. And when it does interrupt the schedule, like for example, say you're maybe a Crystal Palace or a Liverpool, like if you're Jurgen Klopp, it's kind of difficult not to be upset when your 2 best players are leaving. And you think about it, they're already so far behind Man City in the title race. They're losing Mane and Salah. I can see why managers are frustrated, but I think, as I said, going back to the point I first made, from the next AFCON, it will be back in the summer, hopefully, if COVID has sort of subsided by then. But it is an excellent tournament, and I'm thinking of a home victory. I think Cameroon are going to go far in this tournament. That's my tip.
Well, there you go. If you're gambling responsibly, go for Cameroon. And if you're Jurgen Klopp, just cancel all your games until Salah and Mane come back.
That's ridiculous as well, by the way. Just to touch on that, it's not just Liverpool as well. I don't mean to focus on them. There was the Leicester-Everton game next week has been called off because apparently Leicester only have 9 available players, but they've cited apparently there's only like 2 players. It's like AFCON and injury. Since when has AFCON and injury had anything to do with whether you can postpone the game or not? Like these clubs in the Premier League, like EFL, I understand it more. They got low. They haven't got many squads. The quality of even if you go to the youth team, the drop off is severe. Premier League, they have so many players, and even the top.
We're talking
top
pretty pod about Chelsea. They've got about 1,000 players as well. So
it's a joke. Like they could play so many of their youth team, and it wouldn't. And like it's the same for everyone. So these fixtures should be played. And I think, managers are massively sort of using the situation to gain an advantage by not having these games played. Yeah. But that's just my opinion.
The thing is with like Liverpool as well, it turned out like a lot of their COVID cases were actually false positives as well. I just think Jurgen Klopp was scared of Arsenal. He should have just come out and point blank said, "I'm scared of Arsenal."
Chris, no one's scared of Arsenal.
No one's scared of Arsenal now. But obviously pre-Nottingham Forest game, he should have come out.
Only Arsenal fans are scared of Arsenal.
Klopp's ringing them up saying, "We'll play."
Yeah, we'll play right now.
Yeah, Chris. Before I go to Jack, who's your please gamble responsibly bet to win the African Cup of Nations?
Well, I mean, I've already called them out. I've already said they've got like 3 of the best players in the tournament.
Yeah, you are going to go Senegal.
I'm going to go Senegal. I mean, all right, they did scrape a 1-0 win against Zimbabwe. Who I'll leave James to talk about Zimbabwe because he loves the names of the squad of Zimbabwe. There's old James, but yeah, no, Senegal on my pick. Obviously, just having influential players like I know Mendy was out today because obviously he tested positive for COVID. But they have Koulibaly, who's an absolute rock at centre back. Obviously, Mane's a key player. Got Ismail Assar, and yeah. Another thing that I will quickly talk about when it comes to AFCON is that I can't remember. Like it was one of like the chiefs, like the African Confederation, that he was sort of saying if teams have 11 players available, they have to play. Like even with like COVID cases, it's kind of like, well, what if it's the case that you have like all of your goalkeepers out injured? Are we going to see outfield players in goal?
Sadio Mane in goal.
Yeah,
I reckon it'd be a good goal.
That's great fun though. That's what they should do in the Premier League. If you can play,
it would never happen. Would there? They'd never let that happen. I'd love to see it.
Kyle Walker, he's been in goal before for Man City. He'd do a job.
Good old Phil Jagielka. He was pretty much Sheffield United's backup keeper when Warnock was manager.
Just allow emergency loans. So if you don't have it like keeper, like Oxford had to do it. I don't know why it couldn't happen in the Premier League.
Well, we had Emi Martinez in emergency loan, didn't we?
Yeah,
mental.
Not this season, by the way.
Yeah,
that would have been mental.
It was called Damien Martinez back in the day.
Yeah,
he was.
Anyway, Jack, who's your tip to win AFCON? And do you think it's an undervalued tournament? I mean, I looked at a list of who the players that are leaving Premier League clubs this month, and there was a lot. Like I'd say most teams had maybe 3 or 4 players leaving. Is it undervalued as the boys are saying?
I agree. I think, I think I think you look at, I think probably the greatest honour as a footballer is to play for your country. I think, and like regardless of like all the football politics and the money power and these big clubs and saying they can't go and stuff like that, you got to look at it as a, you've got to look at it from a player's perspective as well, not just like the club's perspective. If you're a player, like that's the greatest thing for you, isn't it? Really, is to play and try and win a national competition for your country. So I agree with both of them. And I think some of the way some of the clubs and the representatives have behaved, not just for the AFCON. We briefly touched on the Copa America thing as well, and the refusal to let people go. And I don't even know if I don't really get how that's even a thing. Personally, I don't know how they can refuse. I'm assuming it's to do with contractual obligations. I don't know. Legal obligations, because to me that seems completely wrong that they're able to have that much power over individual choice, but I don't know. But yeah, I agree with Chris and Ash. It's definitely an undervalued competition. And like Chris said, it's such a wide open tournament, and I think from all of us, I remember when I was younger, I can't remember what station it was on, but they used to actually televise it on national television over here.
I feel it was Channel 4.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
It might be Channel 4 or Channel 5. But I actually remember when I was younger watching, I remember watching Samuel Eto'o.
Yeah.
You know, and you're
Yeah.
thinking like, how did Cameroon not win this with like like one of the world's greatest strikers up front? You know, but obviously didn't know a huge amount about football at the time and all the other players. You just didn't recognise the big names, don't you? But it was just such a and it's such an interesting tournament to watch as well, and it's so different to some of the the Euros and the World Cup. And I think it's as competitive, if not more competitive. And I think if you ask everybody, as you look at, I think everybody will have a different opinion on who will win it, because I have a different opinion to Chris and Ash as well.
Go on.
So I'm going to go with Algeria.
Oh,
I think they won the last one, and they've got a very balanced squad, along with some very good individuals as well, with Ben Rama and Mahrez going forward. It's very talented. So
there we go.
I even think Slimani is still. I think he's still playing.
Wow. Where is Islam Slimani nowadays?
I think it's Lyon.
Fair play.
Is it Lyon? I think.
I think that's right.
I think
Just one more thing on AFCON. The kits are the best in any tournament. African football kits are sensational. I mean, if you just to point out a few, you can go and Google them afterwards. You want the Mauritania kit and the Mali kit is super, and obviously the Nigeria kit is like the best selling football kit ever, or something like that. So some incredible kits on show. So that's a reason to watch it alone.
Just a quick one, Ginge. I'm surprised you didn't mention this, but there's a Swindon player in the
I know the Wallacott. Yeah, there is representing Ghana.
Do you reckon he'll have any game time for Ghana? Or
I think he's played today. He lost 1-0, but I think he started in goal.
He started. He did, yeah.
Yeah, against Morocco. As Tinga said, it was one of the many 1-0s.
One of the many.
Yeah, it seems to be a very running theme. It seems to be a lot of penalties as well. I'm just looking at some of the live score.
Did you see the Burkina Faso ones, though, that they gave away against Cameroon? Or like Bertrand Traore as well, who's the captain, should know better. Absolutely shocking, unnecessary tackle to give away. I think it was the second penalty. And the first one was just as bad. Absolutely, completely avoidable.
Well, I don't think it was a penalty, but I don't know if I haven't actually watched the highlights, but I just see a screenshot of the game of... It was the opening game. I think was it Cameroon? I can't remember who they played. Was it Burkina Faso?
Yeah.
Didn't one of the Burkina Faso players make an absolutely outrageous tackle in like the first minute of the game? Like 2 foot like knee height. I was like, Jesus! It looked like, I just looked at the screenshot. I was like, oh my god, that's like the worst tackle I've probably ever seen. It's like nowhere near the ball. Like a bit, you top of his knee on his thigh. That was like a red card. I don't know how that wasn't a red card.
No, it's just a booking.
Bonkers.
Fantastic. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there. And on you make a really good point, Jack, on like seeing Samuel Eto'o and how Cameroon not winning it. I mean, I remember, and then he turned up at Everton, and I realised that's why Cameroon didn't win it, because Eto'o was awful when he was at Everton. He was terrible. That was a weird transfer. Yeah. He was like 40 at the time.
Yeah, he was well past his prime. Like,
it's a weird transfer. It's just a weird transfer. I'll let you boys. We'll finish up there. United Aston Villa's on. No Ronaldo, no Maguire. I've just seen. Van der Beek still can't get a bloody game. He's got to leave. And even De Gea's in goal, so Henderson can't even get a game either. He's not even on the bench. It's Tom Heaton. So Mr. Owen MFC, the goalkeeper's union, will have something to say about that, I imagine, on the United view. But anyway, that was a lot of fun. We touched on Oxford United and the African Cup of Nations all in the same pod. That was great. Have you guys got anything to say before we wrap up? Any AOB? Open up to anyone?
Up the Villa. Let's hope for an upset.
Might see Coutinho, maybe. Is he in the squad? Or
I wish I could tell you. He is not even on the bench, it looks like.
I didn't think he would, because I think he just flew over yesterday or the day before. So I don't know if he's even trained, to be honest. So I don't know if he would be chucked straight in the deep end. But
do you reckon it'll be good, Jack? Coutinho.
Villa. I think I nearly put it in the chat, but I didn't want to commit to such a statement that I think last week we went over our signings of the season so far. I was going to push the bar and say that he could, that is a very key word there, could be the signing of the season, I think. If he can recreate that Liverpool sort of, that like year or 2 years that he had at Liverpool, because I don't think there's many better players in the league then.
He scored the
he was
same
tremendous.
Goal
he was
20 times.
Yeah. I know in Liverpool. I mean, that was Liverpool without some of the big boys now, isn't it? Look at this was pre Salah, wasn't it? I think it was before Salah.
I think.
And this is when they had John Flanagan and that playing, and he was brilliant. Like those couple of years for me, Coutinho was fantastic. Like you said, the goals, they all look the same, but they're all fantastic.
They're all good, aren't they? Yeah.
Just really cracking goals. And he was, I think, arguably probably the best player in the league for that year. For a year, definitely, but maybe going into 2 years at that sort of time. So it's all lifts, isn't it, I suppose? But I think he's finally got a manager I think actually believes in him. So now you might, hopefully you might see the best of him again. I think certainly, if they can get even a smidgen of what he had at Liverpool, Villa will be happy.
There you go. That's a huge claim from Jack Hollyfield there.
It's a huge claim.
It's a massive claim, massive claim. I think we just got to also give a shout out to obviously Kidderminster again.
Yeah.
Obviously, great win, and they've now got themselves a huge home tie against West Ham, and that that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. That's definitely going to be on TV. If that's not on TV, then the people at BBC and ITV should sack themselves.
Who did Boreham Wood get, Chris?
They got Bournemouth away, which that's a bit of an interesting one. Yeah, Bournemouth are they're a good championship team in that, but they haven't got that big of a stadium, have they?
I was thinking that's not ideal for the away fans, is it? Like you want a big away day. You feel, we got a championship club, not too bad. Crap, it's Bournemouth. Probably have about 2,000 or something maximum.
Yeah.
But big Tyrone Marsh, former Oxford, scored. So congratulations to him.
He did. Yeah. Hartlepool got a good tie as well away against obviously Ting doesn't like to talk about Palace and that, but obviously Hartlepool got Crystal Palace away, so that's a huge tie. Yeah,
lovely.
Jeff Stelling will be going mental on Gillette Soccer Saturday.
Fantastic.
When Conor Gallagher puts the 5th past them.
What a lovely note to end on, Chris. Thank you for that. Anyway, thank you very much for those who have watched and listened. Please like and subscribe and follow, turn notifications on. We're still on 62. I think I haven't even checked how many subscribers we've had. Shout out Guiseley, because we had a bit of some waves in the Guiseley Twitter sphere over the last week with a bit of a deep dive into Fort Nevermore, or whatever it was called, Fort Neff, I think they call it, in their part of the world. So shout out to them. But yeah, please do like and subscribe, follow, and we'll do some more. We'll do some more pods very soon. I'm going to go put Canaan Waving Flag and Waka Waka on repeat and watch another 1-0 win for an African nation against another African nation.
96-minute penalty it'll be.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'll also watch some United Villa, I think. Get some Monday night football going. But anyway, it's waving goodbye from Chris, Ash, and Jack, and myself. And we'll see you all very soon. Goodbye. See you.